Welcome to your deep dive into attention and mindfulness. You've given us some really interesting audio excerpts to work with.
Yeah,
I think this is really going to make you rethink how you experience the world, you know?
it's one of those everyday things, that we kind of just take for granted until we really stop and think about it.
Yeah,
And you know how much power attention has over us.
it's true. And your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to not only understand this stuff,
Right.
but like really actually use it
Yeah.
to improve your daily life. So get ready to take notes. We're about to equip you with some serious mental tools.
For example, did you know that scientists can actually measure how good you are at ignoring distractions?
Wait, really?
There are specific tests for that.
So it's not just a feeling like, ugh, I can't focus today. We can actually quantify it.
Absolutely. But let's start with something maybe a little more relatable.
Okay.
Have you ever, bought a new car and then suddenly it seems like everyone else is driving the same model?
Oh, totally. It's like my brain is playing tricks on me.
Yeah, it's called the frequency illusion or the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon.
Uh-huh.
It's a perfect example of how our attention shapes what we perceive. Like our brains get primed to notice something,
Right.
and then it's like the spotlight is shining on it, making it stand out from everything else.
So are magicians exploiting this when they do those misdirection tricks? I've always wondered how they get away with that stuff.
They absolutely use these principles of attention. They direct your focus so intently to one area that you miss the sneaky stuff happening right under your nose. It's not just about being quick with their hands. It's about understanding how the brain works.
So there's actually a classic experiment, the invisible grill experiment, that demonstrates this perfectly. It involves people passing basketballs,
Yeah.
and you have to count how many passes the players in white shirts make. Sounds simple, right? But while you're so focused on counting,
Right?
you completely miss a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the scene. It just highlights how much our brains filter out without us even realizing it.
It's true. And the gorilla study is a great illustration of how limited our attention truly is. It kind of makes you wonder what else we're missing in our everyday lives, just because we're not focused on it. It's kind of unsettling, actually.
That is officially mind-blowing. So if it's not just about like paying attention, what else is there to it?
Well, there are actually different types of attention.
Hmm.
Michael Posner, a prominent researcher in the field,
Okay.
he breaks it down into 3 categories: alerting, orienting, and conflict.
Okay. Let's break those down. What does each one mean in real-world terms?
So think about how alert you are if you're lost in the woods
Right.
compared to when you're relaxing on the couch.
Yeah.
That's your alerting system in action. It's about being ready to respond to potential threats or opportunities.
Okay. So orienting is like when you instinctively turn your head towards a sudden loud noise, even if you're in the middle of a conversation. It's like our attention is a radar constantly scanning for anything new or important.
Exactly. And then there's conflict attention.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one that helps you stay focused on this deep dive, even though there might be other things vying for your attention right now.
Yeah.
Your phone, buzzing traffic outside, maybe even your own wandering thoughts.
Right.
It's your ability to resist distractions and stay on task.
So that's why it feels like a mental workout to like really concentrate on something. It's not just about willpower. It's about engaging this specific type of attention.
That's right. And the really cool thing is that scientists can measure your conflict attention using something called the ANT attention task.
Okay.
It involves responding to arrows on a screen while ignoring detracting information. And based on your reaction time, researchers can actually quantify how strong your conflict attention is.
Wow. So it's almost like we can get a score for how good we are at focusing.
In a way, yes. And if you want to improve that score,
Right.
it helps to understand the brain region responsible for all this, the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex, isn't that the part of the brain that makes us uniquely human?
That's right. It's the most recently evolved part of our brains.
Uh-huh.
And it plays a huge role in things like planning, decision-making, and of course, attention. Think of it like the CEO or architect of your brain, coordinating all those complex mental functions.
So if our prefrontal cortex is the architect, does that mean some people just have better architectural skills than others?
Well, there are individual differences in how well developed our prefrontal cortex is.
Okay.
Some people are naturally better at focusing, planning, and organizing their thoughts.
Okay.
And this is where ADHD comes into play, for example.
Right.
Differences in this brain region are a key component of that condition.
But even if your inner architect isn't winning any awards, there are ways to help it get better, right?
Exactly. And that's where mindfulness comes in. It's more than just relaxation.
Okay.
It's about training your attention and changing your relationship to your thoughts and feelings.
So when people talk about mindfulness helping with focus, they're talking about strengthening that prefrontal cortex muscle.
That's part of it. A study even found that mindfulness reduced obsessive thoughts more effectively than just relaxation alone.
Wow.
It gives you the tools to observe those thoughts without getting swept away by them. Imagine it like a train pulling into the station.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to get on board.
Right.
You can choose to stand on the platform and let it pass.
I love that analogy.
Yeah,
So it's not about stopping the thoughts altogether, it's about choosing how we respond to them.
precisely.
Okay.
And one of the key mindfulness techniques for this is labeling. When you notice a thought, simply label it worried thought, judgmental thought, etc. It sounds simple, but it actually helps regulate the emotional circuitry in the brain.
So by naming it, we're taming it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're engaging your prefrontal cortex, your inner architect, to help you manage those thoughts and emotions more effectively.
Okay.
But we'll explore more about how that works and specific techniques you could try in the next part of your deep dive.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. It's fascinating how this connects to the bigger picture, like how our brains are wired. The audio excerpts mentioned the stress of decision making,
Oh, tell me about it.
and that really resonated with me. It feels like these days we're constantly bombarded with choices, big and small.
Yeah.
No wonder our brains feel fried sometimes.
Right.
Our brains are constantly evaluating options, weighing pros and cons.
Yeah.
It's like having a committee in your head debating every single decision.
And sometimes it feels like that committee just can't reach a verdict.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of disambiguating comes in which the source material touched on.
Okay.
It means we instinctively try to simplify situations,
Yeah.
to make choices feel less stressful. For example,
Okay.
imagine you're trying to decide between a salad and a burger for lunch.
Okay.
Instead of getting bogged down on the nutritional details, you might reframe the decision as, what will satisfy my craving right now?
So we're basically cutting through the mental clutter to get to the heart of what we really want. That's a great way to put it. And this is where mindfulness can be incredibly helpful.
Okay.
It helps us become aware of those moments when we're overthinking and trying to control everything, reminding us that we don't need to have all the answers.
So instead of agonizing over every little detail, mindfulness helps us trust our gut feeling a bit more.
Exactly. It allows us to tap into our intuition,
Okay.
which can be surprisingly accurate when we give it space to emerge.
But our intuition isn't always right, is it? Sometimes we make bad calls even when it feels right in the moment.
That's true. But mindfulness isn't about blindly following our gut. It's about recognizing that uncertainty is a part of life.
Yeah.
It helps us accept that ambiguity and make decisions with more awareness and less fear of making the wrong choice.
I like that. It's about making peace with maybe instead of needing a definitive yes or no all the time.
Exactly. Speaking of ambiguity, the source material also talked about how mindfulness can help us become aware of our conceptual frameworks. What exactly does that mean? Think of it like this. We all wear a pair of invisible glasses that filter how we see the world.
Okay.
And those glasses are our beliefs, biases, and assumptions that shape our perception.
So it's not just about what we pay attention to, it's also about how we interpret the things we see. Like two people can witness the same event, but take away totally different meanings from it.
That's exactly right. And sometimes those glasses, those conceptual frameworks can distort our vision.
Mm.
Mindfulness helps us take them off, examine them,
Okay.
and maybe even give them a good cleaning.
So we can see things more clearly without those filters getting in the way.
Exactly. There's actually a fascinating study mentioned where people went on an intensive meditation retreat.
Okay.
And afterward, they were shown Rorschach ink blocks, those abstract images where people see different things.
Right.
Well, the participants who were highly concentrated during the retreat were less likely to come up with elaborate stories or interpretations of the ink blots. They simply described what they saw in a very neutral way.
That's interesting. It's like meditation helps them become more objective, less influenced by their own preconceived ideas.
Yes. They were able to see the world with fresh eyes, unburdened by those habitual patterns of thinking.
Wow. So how do we actually start to become aware of those hidden frameworks we're carrying around?
It starts with paying attention to our thoughts, recognizing them as just thoughts, and not getting swept away by them. Remember that train analogy?
Yes.
We have a choice whether to hop on board the runaway train of thoughts or observe it from the platform.
Okay.
The key is to create some space between ourselves and our thinking.
Right. And one of the techniques we talked about was labeling those thoughts. Just giving them a name, worried thought, judgmental thought, helps take away their power.
Absolutely. Labeling is like hitting the pause button on autopilot, allowing us to respond to our thoughts with more awareness and less reactivity.
But what about those really sticky thoughts? The ones that keep circling back even when we try to ignore them?
For those persistent thoughts, sometimes it's helpful to shift our attention to our body. Often those thoughts are fueled by underlying emotions,
Right.
and emotions manifest physically.
So instead of getting caught up in the mental story, we turn our attention to the physical sensations.
Yes, it's like saying, okay, I'm having this thought, but what's happening in my body right now? Is my stomach tense? Are my shoulders tight? Am I holding my breath?
Right.
Sometimes simply acknowledging those physical sensations helps the thought lose its grip.
It's like grounding ourselves in the present moment rather than getting lost in the mental chatter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar to the thoughts laboratory exercise we touched on earlier?
It definitely has that element of observation and curiosity. The Thoughts Laboratory is all about becoming a scientist of your own mind. You simply notice your thoughts without judgment, like a researcher collecting data.
So what kind of data are we looking for? What should we be paying attention to?
Notice the content of your thoughts. What kinds of things are popping up? Are they mostly positive, negative, or neutral? Observe the speed and frequency. Are your thoughts racing or slow and meandering? Also pay attention to the quality of your thoughts.
Okay.
Are they clear and focused or fuzzy and scattered? There are no right or wrong answers here.
Okay.
It's simply about becoming more aware of the patterns of your thinking.
So it's like we're turning our minds into a fascinating research project.
Exactly. And the more we observe those thoughts, the more we realize they're not as solid or permanent as they seem. They're just fleeting mental events, like bubbles rising to the surface and then disappearing.
That's a great analogy. It makes them seem a lot less intimidating when we see them that way.
Right. And that realization can be incredibly liberating. It helps us create some distance between ourselves and those thoughts,
Uh-huh.
allowing us to respond with more choice and less reactivity.
So the thoughts laboratory is one way to practice mindfulness. What about the other two exercises we mentioned?
The second exercise involves incorporating thoughts into your regular meditation practice. Instead of getting frustrated when your mind wanders, you simply acknowledge those thoughts as part of the experience.
So it's like we're expanding our field of awareness to include those thoughts that inevitably arise.
Exactly. It's about creating a welcoming space for those thoughts, recognizing that they're a natural part of the mind. Instead of battling them, we can simply observe them with the same gentle attention we give to our breath.
This sounds a lot more peaceful than my usual approach, which is to get annoyed with myself for not being able to clear my mind.
Right. It's about shifting from a mindset of judgment to one of curiosity and acceptance. And then there's the clouds in the sky visualization. This one is especially helpful when you're feeling overwhelmed by difficult thoughts.
Okay. That's one where we imagine our minds are a vast open sky.
Exactly. And those troublesome thoughts are simply clouds passing through. Some clouds are big and dark, some are small and fluffy, but they all eventually drift away.
Right.
The sky remains vast and unchanging.
It's such a calming image.
Yeah.
It helps put things in perspective.
Right. It reminds us that we are not those thoughts. We are the spacious awareness that holds those thoughts. And when we remember that we tap into a sense of peace and freedom that's always available to us.
That's a powerful reminder. So it's not about trying to force those thoughts away. It's about shifting our perspective, realizing that they're just temporary visitors, not permanent residents.
That's a great way to put it. And the more we practice these mindfulness techniques, the more we strengthen our ability to observe our thoughts and choose how we respond to them. It's like building a mental muscle that allows us to navigate life's ups and downs with more grace and resilience.
That sounds incredibly empowering, but I imagine it takes time and effort to develop these skills. It's not like flipping a switch.
You're absolutely right. Mindfulness is a practice, not a destination. And it's not always easy, but even small, consistent efforts can make a big difference over time.
So it's not about being perfect at it. It's about showing up and doing the work, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is those few minutes can have a ripple effect throughout your entire day.
Wow.
You might notice yourself becoming more patient, more present, and more compassionate toward yourself and others.
Okay. This has been really insightful, but I'm curious to hear more about how this all applies to the everyday stress we all experience. The excerpts mention something about how we try to make sense of the world even when there's not much information to go on.
Yes, our brains are incredible meaning-making machines.
Right.
We're constantly looking for patterns, trying to connect the dots, and create a coherent narrative out of our experiences.
But what happens when those narratives aren't accurate? What if we're misinterpreting things or jumping to conclusions?
That's where things can get tricky, and that's where mindfulness can be a game changer.
Okay.
It helps us become aware of those moments when we're filling in the blanks, projecting our own assumptions onto situations, or clinging to stories that might not be true.
So it's about questioning our own narratives, being open to the possibility that we might not have all the information.
It's exactly.
Mindfulness helps us become more curious about our own thought processes, recognizing that our thoughts are not always facts. They're just mental events shaped by our past experiences, beliefs, and biases.
So it's like we're reclaiming our power to choose how we interpret the world rather than being at the mercy of our automatic reactions.
That's the heart of it. And in the next part of your deep dive, we'll explore how mindfulness can help us manage those reactions, especially when it comes to dealing with those obsessive or troublesome thoughts that can really take a toll on our well-being.
So we've talked about how our brains are wired to create meaning sometimes, even when we don't have all the information. It makes me wonder about those times when our thoughts just kind of spiral out of control.
Hmm?
The source material touched on mindfulness as a potential tool for managing obsessive or intrusive thoughts. Is that something you can elaborate on?
Absolutely. The audio excerpt specifically mentioned metacognitive awareness,
Okay.
which is a fancy way of saying we can become aware of the fact that we're thinking.
It's like taking a step back from those thoughts and observing them without getting caught up in the content.
So instead of being swept away by the thought, I'm a failure, we can notice that thought arising and simply say, ah, there's that I'm a failure thought again.
Exactly. And research has shown that this metacognitive awareness can be really helpful in reducing obsessive or repetitive thinking. One study even compared mindfulness meditation to pure relaxation exercises
Okay.
and found that mindfulness was more effective at reducing those kinds of thoughts.
So it's not just about calming down. It's about changing our relationship to those thoughts, becoming more of an observer than a participant.
That's a great way to put it. It's like we're creating some space between ourselves and those thoughts,
Yeah.
which takes away their power to control us. The source material also mentioned a 4-step program developed by psychiatrist Jeffrey Schwartz for treating obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Right.
And one of the key components is cultivating this metacognitive awareness.
So it sounds like mindfulness could be a really valuable tool for people who struggle with those kinds of thought patterns, even in severe cases.
Yeah.
But shifting gears a bit, I'm also curious about the connection between mindfulness and ADHD.
Oh, that was another fascinating point raised in the audio excerpts. They mentioned how ADHD is often characterized by differences in the prefrontal cortex that architects the brain we've been talking about.
Right. So for someone with ADHD, it's like their inner architect might need some extra support in managing those executive functions like planning, organizing, and filtering out distractions.
Exactly. And while medication can be helpful for some individuals with ADHD, mindfulness offers a complementary approach that can help strengthen those self-regulation skills. It's like giving the architect a new set of tools and blueprints to work with.
The excerpts mentioned a pilot study at UCLA where adults and teens with ADHD participated in a mindfulness program and showed improvements in their conflict attention.
That's right. Conflict attention, that ability to stay focused even when there are distractions, is crucial for self-regulation.
Yeah.
So even small improvements in this area can have a big impact on someone's ability to manage their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
There was also a study mentioned where a 6-week meditation program for children with ADHD and their families led to a reduction in ADHD symptoms and improved family dynamics. It's amazing how those positive effects can ripple outward.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of our mental and emotional well-being. And while more research is needed to fully understand the benefits of mindfulness for ADHD, the studies so far are very encouraging. It suggests that mindfulness could be a valuable tool for anyone who struggles with attention challenges, regardless of whether they have a formal diagnosis.
So how exactly does mindfulness work on attention? I remember the source material mentioned different types of attention that are relevant.
Yes, there's focused attention,
Okay.
which is like a laser beam honing in on a single object.
Yeah.
And then there's open monitoring, which is more like a wide-angle lens
Yeah.
taking a broader range of experiences.
So it's like we're learning to use different lenses depending on the situation. Sometimes we need that laser sharp focus. Other times we need to be more aware of our surroundings.
Exactly. And the research shows that mindfulness can actually improve both types of attention. There were studies mentioned that found mindfulness meditation improved conflict attention, that ability to stay focused even with distractions. And there's also evidence that mindfulness can enhance orienting attention, our ability to shift our attention to something new or important.
It's like a workout for our attention muscles, making them stronger, more flexible.
Yeah.
But does it take years of dedicated practice to see those benefits?
Not necessarily. While long-term meditators do show some remarkable brain changes,
Uh-huh.
even short periods of mindfulness training can make a difference.
Hmm.
Some studies showed improvements after just 5 days of practice.
That's really good news. It
Mhm.
makes mindfulness seem much more accessible, not just something for monks on mountaintops.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while formal meditation practice is beneficial, you can also incorporate mindfulness into your everyday life through simple practices like paying attention to your breath, noticing the sensations of your body, or simply listening fully to someone when they're talking.
That reminds me of those practical exercises we discussed earlier, the thoughts laboratory, incorporating thoughts into meditation, and the clouds and the sky visualization. Those all seem like great starting points.
They're all wonderful tools. And remember, it's about finding what works best for you. There's no right or wrong way to practice mindfulness. The key is to approach it with curiosity, experimentation, and a sense of kindness toward yourself.
That's great advice. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways you hope our listener will walk away with?
I think one of the most important takeaways is that we have more control over our minds than we often realize.
Yeah.
We're not at the mercy of our thoughts and feelings. We can learn to observe them, choose how we respond to them, and cultivate a more peaceful and fulfilling inner experience.
It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we relate to our thoughts and emotions, even the difficult ones. And mindfulness gives us the tools to make those choices more consciously.
Exactly. And it's not about becoming some kind of Zen master. It's about incorporating those mindful moments into everyday life. Even small, consistent efforts can make a big difference over time.
It's like planting seeds of mindfulness that can grow and blossom into greater awareness, resilience, and well-being.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I hope our listener feels inspired to nurture those seeds and see what amazing things can grow from them.
This has been such an incredible deep dive into the world of attention and mindfulness. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on how my mind works and the power I have to shape my experience.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise.
And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep those aha moments coming.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it as enlightening as we did. Remember, you have more power over your mind than you might think. And with a little mindfulness, you can unlock that power and create a world of possibilities. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.